Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're unpacking a resource that actually came from you, our listeners.
Oh, right. Which one is it?
It's Real Questions, Real Answers About Sex, The Complete Guide to Intimacy as God Intended by Louis and Melissa McBurney.
Ah, okay. Got it.
And yeah, it's not just, the mechanics. It's really trying to be this comprehensive look at sexual intimacy, but specifically within Christian marriage.
Right. Tackling some potentially awkward questions, maybe?
Exactly. With a certain directness that's rooted in their faith perspective. So our mission today is basically to pull out the core insights.
The good stuff.
Yeah, those useful nuggets, maybe some surprising bits to help understand and maybe even, enrich this part of married life. We'll touch on everything from foundations to like the practical day-to-day.
And it's interesting where this book actually came from. It started as their real sex columns in Marriage Partnership magazine, part of Christianity Today International.
Oh, okay. So they were answering real questions from readers.
Exactly. Directly engaging with people's intimate concerns. The editor's letter in the book even points out how approachable the McBurneys are, despite their expertise.
Makes sense.
And the whole point of the guide, they actually say it's to take the covers off the whole subject of sex for married couples.
Take the covers off, huh?
Yeah. The goal being, fostering a healthier, more robust appreciation for each other as sexual beings. Connection, pleasure, all that.
Okay, so what kind of ground does it cover then? It sounds like a lot.
It is. They talk about the purpose of sex,
Mhm.
the benefits in a marriage, some basic anatomy,
Mm,
birth control, how different life phases impact things, babies getting older.
right, the real stuff.
Totally. And those common challenges, like maybe one person wants sex more often or difficulties reaching orgasm.
And you mentioned it touches on sensitive topics too.
Yeah, definitely. Things like pornography, infidelity, but always filtered through that Christian belief system and values, so the audience is really clear. Christian married couples looking for guidance. And for you, the learner listening in, this deep dive should give you a pretty focused rundown of the key ideas and the practical advice from this specific source.
So whether you're just curious or maybe facing some challenges yourself or just want some perspective.
Right. We're going to try and pull out the most relevant bits, those aha moments, hopefully, without it feeling like homework.
Okay, so where do they start? What's the foundational viewpoint?
Well, a huge piece is this idea of God's design for sex.
Okay.
The book really emphasizes sex as this powerful gift from God, intended for passion,
Eroticism.
playfulness, and
Yeah.
real satisfaction. But, and this is key, specifically within the commitment of Christian marriage.
So boundaries are important in their view.
Very. They talk about biblical principles creating these boundaries, but framing them as being for protection and like maximum enjoyment. They even use an analogy,
Yeah.
like safety rules for a kid with a new bike. The rules help you enjoy it without getting hurt.
Interesting analogy.
And they weave in specific biblical themes like the male-female union being God's intention, procreation happening within marriage,
Yeah.
and critically, the relationship itself being essential for true intimacy. It's not just physical.
So selfishness is discouraged.
Big time. It's all about fostering oneness with God's help through a faithful, intimate marriage.
Okay, but like we said, real life happens. Things aren't always ideal.
Yeah.
How does the book handle common challenges?
Right. They jump into that pretty quickly. They use an example, Mary and Bill.
Okay.
Married over 20 years, active in their church, seems fine on the surface, but Mary had never experienced an orgasm.
Wow, 20 years.
Yeah. And it really illustrates how a lack of understanding, but maybe even more, a lack of talking about it, can lead to these huge, long-lasting problems.
So communication is going to be a big theme here, I'm guessing.
Absolutely massive. Mary and Bill's story just drives home how vital open exploration and, just talking about needs and responses really is.
Because both people were probably frustrated.
Right. Exactly. Frustrated, unfulfilled, but because they didn't talk, it just stayed hidden for decades.
Okay, what other challenges do they cover?
Another big one, and I think this affects a lot of couples, is dealing with premarital sexual history.
Yeah. That can be tricky.
For sure. The book acknowledges that past experiences, good or bad, definitely shape intimacy in the present marriage. They talk about jealousy over a partner's past.
Mm.
And their advice is interesting. They suggest not going into really graphic, potentially hurtful details.
Really? Why is that?
The focus, they argue, should be on building trust and oneness now in this marriage. Dredging up every detail might not help that.
So it's about navigating the past without letting it derail the present.
Precisely. And they frame forgiveness of past hurts, whether your own or your partner's, as a conscious choice you have to make to move forward. It's essential.
Okay. What about the beginning of marital intimacy, like the wedding night, the honeymoon?
They address that too. They actually state that waiting for sex until marriage is the, quote, least complicated route to sexual initiation.
Least complicated.
Yeah.
That's direct.
It is. But they also add a dose of realism. They caution that the very first time might actually be, well, disappointing.
Uh-huh. Not exactly the Hollywood
Not
version.
necessarily, no. Their point is that the relationship, the commitment, the intimacy built over time, that's what really deepens the experience beyond just the physical act.
So manage expectations a bit.
Yeah. And they offer practical tips, too, for the honeymoon. Logistical stuff, but also sexual prep, like having a premarital physical exam and making sure there's enough lubrication for the first time to avoid pain.
That's practical. Okay, but honeymoons end. What about after that?
Right, the post-honeymoon reality check. The book acknowledges this phase can bring fatigue, maybe some anxiety, unmet expectations creeping in.
Yeah, real life hits.
Exactly. They share another story, Doug and Sue, to show how damaging it can be when couples stay silent about sexual frustrations that start early on.
So Doug and Sue had issues right from the start, but didn't talk about them.
Pretty much. And it just festered and grew over time, causing real problems in the relationship.
So again, communication.
And mutual listening, yeah. Understanding it's a learning curve. Developing sexual intimacy takes time and effort together. It's gradual.
Okay, so what are some of the big roadblocks, the things that stop couples from having that sexual freedom they talk about?
They identify a few key ones. First up is pain.
Physical pain.
Often, yeah. They mention it can be due to not enough lubrication or maybe intercourse that's too aggressive. In some cases, it can even lead to vaginismus.
Right.
Then there's fear. Lots of kinds of fear. Fear of not being good enough, fear of STDs, pregnancy, sometimes fear of religious condemnation.
Or past trauma.
Absolutely. Fear linked to past sexual abuse is a big one they address. How anticipating pain, physical or emotional, can just shut things down. Old coping mechanisms might kick in too, like pulling away emotionally.
Makes sense.
What else? Anger. This was really interesting.
Anger is a barrier to sex.
Yeah. They challenge that old saying, kiss and make up.
They don't think you should.
Their point is you need to actually make up before you make love. Resolve the conflict first.
Why?
They suggest that while sex might help a man release tension or anger, if his wife is still feeling hurt or angry, the physical act can actually make her feel worse, more violated.
Huh. So it affects men and women differently, perhaps?
Potentially, yeah. Unresolved anger becomes this huge wall. One person might want sex, the other is still emotionally wounded. So deal with the fight first.
Okay. Pain, fear, anger, anything else?
Yeah, one more big one. Just plain old ignorance.
Ignorance, like not knowing stuff.
Basically, yeah. Gaps in sexual knowledge, especially about the differences in how men and women might experience desire or respond sexually. They think a lot of it comes down to poor sex ed and just societal myths.
So education is part of the solution they offer.
Definitely. They hope the book itself helps bridge that gap, gives couples accurate information, dispels myths so they can explore and enjoy sex together in a way they believe God intended.
Let's talk about desire itself. That's often a mismatch, right? One person wants it more than the other.
For sure. They tackle that directly. They mention testosterone's role in male sex drive, which is often why men might think about sex more frequently.
Okay.
But they also bring in societal factors, like how traditional gender roles might make some women hesitant to initiate sex.
So it's biological and social.
Seems like it, yeah. The main advice is understanding each other's feelings, their libido levels, and especially for women, recognizing how important emotional closeness often is before desire kicks in.
And again, talking about it.
Always talking about past experiences, current desires, what feels good, who initiates when. It's all part of bridging that gap.
Life also just gets in the way, doesn't it? Work, kids.
Oh, totally. The book acknowledges that huge impact. Work stress, exhaustion from kids, different life phases, it all affects intimacy.
Do they offer solutions? Or just point out the problem?
No, they offer practical tips. Things like actively trying to balance work and play, consciously setting priorities even. Scheduling time.
Scheduling sex, or just time together.
Scheduling undisturbed discussion time is one suggestion. A time to connect and talk about intimacy, among other things. Making it a priority.
Okay. What about specific phases, like pregnancy or after the baby arrives?
Yeah, they cover that. Huge transitions, obviously. They stress the need for flexibility, adjusting expectations, and, you guessed it,
Communicate.
open communication. And also the challenges with kids in the house feeling embarrassed, just being drained of energy. Their advice involves planning, but also being adaptable. Spontaneity might take a back seat for a while.
That feels realistic.
Yeah, acknowledging the physical and emotional shifts and needing empathy during those demanding times.
What about later in life? Does the book address aging and sex?
It does, and actually in a really encouraging way. They quote someone saying sex in later life can be better than ever.
Oh, that's hopeful.
It is, but they're also realistic about why sometimes the magic fades. Things like unmet expectations piling up, old hurts that weren't resolved, just the impact of life stages.
So how do you keep it good, according to them?
Focus on the relationship overall. Keep showing interest in each other sexually. And be proactive about finding solutions for any physical changes that come with age. Don't just let it fizzle out.
Okay, this next one might be a bit sensitive for some listeners. Bedroom aids, fantasies.
Yep, they go there. Vibrators, maybe watching suggestive videos together, personal fantasies.
And what's their take?
Kind of a measured one. They acknowledge these things can potentially enhance things for a couple,
But
but there's a caution. Don't let these aids or fantasies become preferable to actual intimacy with your spouse. And definitely steer clear if it leads towards pornography.
why the strong caution on porn?
They view it as dangerous, addictive, and something that fundamentally pulls away from the marital bond and the real intimacy between partners. That aligns with their whole framework.
So external aid's okay sometimes, but the focus stays on the couple and maybe creating shared fantasies together.
Exactly. Enhancing the marital excitement, not replacing the connection.
Another difficult topic.
Yeah.
Adult.
They explore why it might happen. Natural attraction to others, sure, but also unmet needs in the marriage, maybe a feeling of spiritual emptiness.
Do they give warning signs? Things to look out for?
Yeah, they outline signs that a marriage might be heading towards infidelity. It's presented as a way to be proactive, to hopefully address underlying issues before it gets to that point.
And if it does happen, infidelity occurs.
Then they talk about the aftermath, the absolute necessity of confession, genuine remorse, and then the long, hard work of reconciliation.
Emphasizing how hard it is.
Definitely. They don't sugarcoat it. Rebuilding trust after that kind of betrayal is presented as a massive challenge, a long journey. Forgiveness is just the first step.
Okay. What about specific sexual difficulties, like medical or psychological issues?
They cover several things like failure to reach orgasm for women, delayed ejaculation for men, erectile dysfunction.
Common issues people face.
Right. And they highlight that it's often a mix of physical and psychological factors.
So what do they recommend?
Seeking professional help. Go see a urologist or a therapist or both. Get qualified support to figure out what's going on.
And beyond treatment.
They also stress reducing performance anxiety, trying to take the pressure off and focus more on the intimacy, the connection, rather than just the, mechanics of the act. They also briefly mention how weight and negative body image can impact desire too.
Okay. Makes sense. It sounds like they bring it all back to the mind and communication in the end.
Very much so. They actually call the brain the most powerful sexual organ.
Interesting.
Yeah, emphasizing how much it's influenced by our past, messages we received, beliefs we hold, maybe unconsciously, about sex.
So we need to examine those beliefs.
Right. Identify maybe negative or unhelpful ones and challenge them. And then the capstone is effective communication.
Using I statements, active listening.
All of that. Presented as absolutely crucial for working through sexual issues together. They also talk about common fears that stop people from communicating openly and give guidance on when and how to seek professional counseling if you're stuck.
It really sounds like communication is the thread running through almost everything they discuss.
It really is. If you had to pull out one core piece of advice from the whole book, that would probably be it.
So summing up some of those practical advice nuggets. Talk about it openly, honestly, regularly. They even suggest maybe having intimacy check-ins.
Yeah, just dedicated time to discuss how things are going, needs, desires, and related to that, be willing to experiment and adjust.
Try new things, see what works for both partners.
Exactly. Explore different positions, techniques, ways of pleasuring each other. It's a discovery process.
And be patient.
Definitely. Patient and understanding. It's a learning curve, right? There will be ups and downs. Mutual patience is key.
And all of this happens best when the overall relationship is strong.
Absolutely. Prioritize the relationship. Emotional connection, overall health, that's the foundation for fulfilling intimacy.
And don't be afraid to get help if you need it.
Right. Counseling is a valid resource for persistent issues, past trauma, communication breakdowns. It's not a sign of failure.
And ultimately, it's all driving towards oneness. Is that the term they use?
Yeah, that's the concept.
Yeah.
A deep connection, body, soul, and spirit. And sexual intimacy is presented as a really key expression of that total marital unity.
Okay. So wrapping up this deep dive into real questions, real answers about sex. We've definitely covered a lot. It's clear this resource comes from a specific perspective,
A Christian marital framework.
but it offers a wide range of thoughts on sexual intimacy. It highlights what they see as its divine purpose, the absolute necessity of talking about it,
Constantly.
and lots of practical ways to handle common challenges through different life stages. It really seems aimed at helping couples build a sex life that's fulfilling
Yeah.
and God-honoring in their view.
Right. Not just the physical act, but how it fits into the whole relationship connection.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. Considering everything we've touched on, the physical, emotional, even the spiritual side of sex that this book emphasizes, how might really digging into your own experiences, your partner's experiences, your expectations, how might that unlock deeper connection and pleasure, moving beyond just the act itself?
That's a great question, because this resource really suggests that talking, learning, growing together, that's the key to a lifelong journey of sexual discovery, specifically within that secure space of marriage.
Absolutely. We hope this deep dive gave you some valuable insights, maybe sparked some thinking or even some conversations. Intimacy is complex, for sure.
It is, and this book offers one particular, very detailed way to look at it.
So we encourage you to take what resonated. Think about it in light of your own life and beliefs. What questions do you still have?
Yeah, because this is just scratching the surface, really. It's potentially a lifelong journey of understanding and connection.